What's going on, everybody? Dylan Manfrey on hand. So excited to be joined by Kristian Winfield of the New York Daily News. He writes basketball, covers the NBA, and I'm really grateful for his time. So, Kristian, how are you doing today? How are you holding up?
I'm good. It's really nice out, Other than that, there's obviously the whole situation going on in Minnesota, and that's kind of weighing on a lot of us. But
Sure.
other than that, it's beautiful. It's summertime in New York City. Can't even really enjoy the summer because the streets are kind of closed right now. But hanging in. I got some. Actually, I'll just flip my screen real quick. This is basically what I've been doing all day, every day. Is just playing Call of Duty. That's basically where all my time is going. So other than that, that's it. Call of Duty, writing about basketball, whatever's happening, and just looking outside with a hand on the window, knowing that I can't really do too much.
I mean, do you get outside at all? Go for a run?
Yeah, no, I go for runs fairly frequently, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. I go run Prospect Park here in Brooklyn. It's about a 3.5-mile loop, so that's pretty cool. I'm also hunkered down with mom while we're in this quarantine, so I'm the de facto errand boy. So I got to go pick up groceries, pick up whatever she might need, whatever I might need. And sometimes I'll just go outside, sit on the stoop, maybe even every now and again throw my mask on, go for a walk. But
Right.
Everything's closed, man. It's terrible. It's a rough life when because New York is New York. You know what I'm saying? Like it's so much things that are supposed to be happening, and now it's like there's nothing. So I've become a savage in Call of Duty. All I do is play Call of Duty all day, play Warzone. I don't even play 2K anymore, man. I just get on Warzone and try to get these dubs. It's crazy.
I mean, it's New York, the city that never sleeps. You never really found a way for it to sleep until
slumber right now.
Like it took a global pandemic for New York to go to sleep.
Exactly.
Which
it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, it feels weird. It definitely feels weird to say.
Yeah.
So
it's still surreal to me, to be honest.
Oh, absolutely. So I saw a bunch of trends on social media saying that, to post pictures of your last moment of quote unquote normalcy. So what was that for you? What was, what were you doing before, everything hit the fan?
Well, life as an NBA reporter is pretty cyclical. You know what I'm saying? You go to games, you go to practice, you find rest when you can, So my days were, I think, right on March 11th or so, the Nets were they were on a West Coast road trip. So they had just beaten the Lakers. Spencer Dinwiddie hit that game winner. Mm-hmm. And then they were about to play the first game with no fans. They're about to travel up to San Fran to play to Oakland to play the Warriors. And that just didn't happen. And then things started kind of crumbling around, you know what I'm saying? NBA, Rudy Gobert gets suspended. Actually, I was on a date, now that I'm thinking back on it, when Rudy Gobert tested positive for the coronavirus. I was on a date with someone I no longer talk to, so that tells you how that goes down. But, I was on a date, and we were at a nice little pizza spot, and we were eating, and I'm the type of person where if I'm on a date and I'm actually trying to get to know you, I turn my phone over, right? I mute my phone, and that's tough for me to do because I need to know what's going on.
Stuff.
I didn't even have the alert go off on my phone. The table next to us started talking about, oh, Rudy Gobert this, Rudy Gobert that, and then my antenna goes, I'm like, what is happening? So I just turned to the guy next to me, goes, yeah, Rudy Gobert tested positive for coronavirus. Picked my phone up, said, hold on, ran outside, called my editor, and then date ended there. Went home, had to write. And then things started picking up, things started not necessarily picking up. They started shutting down, they started, I think 2 days later, there was a quarantine in place. It was over. The Nets came back home. I haven't seen or spoken to any Nets players since then, outside of Twitter. Haven't been to Barclays, haven't been to, the only thing that I've done really that's been outside in the basketball world is I've kind of just I drove to all the nice parks and playgrounds. I drove to Dyckman. I drove to Rucker Park, West 4th, the Cage. I drove to all the iconic New York City parks and playgrounds to see that all the rims have been taken down off the backboards because, can't really social distance and play basketball at the same time. That's kind of just been my life since then. I haven't really been doing too much. Just been chilling.
Right. I was going to ask you about that story because, when I was reading it, that was a really impactful story because, basketball is such an integrated part of, New York's culture. And I saw some of the pictures that you had posted on your Twitter and I'm like, oh my God, is this real? People skateboarding on the court and stuff like that. Why was that piece so impactful for you?
And it's really cool about writing. Yeah, I'm from here. I'm from Brooklyn. You know what I'm saying? I grew up playing at a playground right around the corner from my house, 8 Ball. That was the first park that I went to. And I went to 8 Ball. There was someone just practicing their handles there with no rims on the backboards, you know? And it was really just a curiosity thing. My editor hit me up like, hey, you should just try driving around to all the major parks. And I was like, you know what? That sounds like a really good idea. Started with the one in my hood. I live in Bed-Stuy. Drove right around the corner, saw that the rims were down. And I was talking to the guy, and he was like, yeah, you know, the rims were up yesterday. And they took them down overnight. And I was like, wow. And I just went to all the parks, and it was the same type of thing. And, you know, I think the story, number one, I don't like to toot my own horn too often, but I think that I wrote that story pretty well. But I think that was also impactful because, like, it's like you said, you know, basketball is in the fiber of this city. Right. You know, so for there not to be any basketball, period, not even on TV, forget about on TV. You can't go to a park and play basketball now. That's what people do. And it's getting hot outside. These parks would be crowded at this point. And that's kind of why they had to take the rims down. Because if they didn't take the rims down, I promise you, coronavirus is not preventing anybody from going outside and playing 3-on-3, 4-on-4, 5-on-5. They're going to do what they want to do. They'll put a mask on and say, "Oh no, we're doing this the right way." But at the end of the day, I kind of understand why they took the rims down. Sure. But I think that's the reason why that story did so well. Is because, number one, it was something that nobody else had done. No one else had the idea of driving around to all the rims, all the playgrounds. And then secondly, it's just the makeup of this city. You can't talk about New York City and not talk about basketball. And to have that taken away virtually overnight, I think that's pretty much why that story did so well.
Yeah, I mean, even at the park at the end of my street, they took the rim down. And I was like, even here, like, you know, I live in a small town, 2 by 2 mile town, but, you know, even here, you know, at the, you know, the local park at the end of my street, the rims are down there too.
Yeah, the rims were down at a kiddie park. Like, they had a park, they had like a little playground. It was a hoop that couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 feet tall. And they took that rim down too. I'm like, wow, you guys are really going for gold. Yeah, I feel like I have a decent idea of how tall, like I have a measure rim is, and that rim or the backboard was only like just above my head. I was like, oh, you guys are serious about this.
You broke up for like a split second there. I heard you when you said, like, you know, they took down the kiddie, or they took the rim off the kiddie hoop. But then what did you say after that?
No, I was just saying, like, I didn't necessarily like measure it to see if it was exactly 6 or 7 feet, but the backboard was kind of like right over my head, and I was like, okay, well, this is clearly a kid's playground, so this is clearly a kid's basketball court, and for them to have gone to this length, it was like, dang, I guess ball really is life, and it is. You know? That's why that story did so well, thankfully.
Yeah, I mean, I was, you know, when you were posting all the updates about it, I was like, oh my God, this is happening. I couldn't believe it for myself. Obviously, I understand why, you know, those things happened, you know, but so what else have you been writing about since, you know, everything shut down? Like, what are the challenges that this has brought upon you in able to do your job? Because you're not covering the Nets, like, you know, every single day like you normally would.
I mean, yeah, the biggest challenge is that, you know, I'm an NBA beat reporter with no beat to cover, right? Like, there's no Nets game. Forget about Nets. There's no basketball, right? So everything is redundant. I'm writing coronavirus updates on, okay, the NBA. Adam Silver was talking to the Board of Governors today. He was talking to the Board of Governors, and now it seems like, okay, July 31st is the date that the NBA is targeting to restart the season. Cool. But how many different, like, all that is an update to the last story. So everything is updating. There's nothing new. And that's kind of what's kind of eating at me. You know, some teams are beginning to restrict access. And it's kind of odd. That's the thing that really gets me, that kind of fires me up sometimes. Like, you know, over in Portland, the Trailblazers media gets to talk to Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum. They've set up Zoom meetings for everybody, right? So they've got Trailblazers beat reporters, whoever they want. It seems like they've at least talked to at least once since the pandemic started.
Yeah,
we haven't gotten any players. We got Sean Marks at the beginning of this, which was cool. Thank you for that. But, like, we want to hear from Kyrie. We want to hear from KD. We want to hear from everybody. It's not even about basketball at this point. It's about humanity. And we haven't been able to get access to those guys. So number one, it's just like the limit to access to players. And then on top of that, it's just like there's no basketball, right? Like, I don't really know. Like, this, I never in my life did I ever dream that as a, you know, when I was a kid and I was thinking, okay, I want to be a sports writer, never thought I'd be in a world where there would be no sports. And it's challenging because now you have to find different creative angles to write things about. Like today I wrote about Dan Orlovsky, who had the nerve to call out Damian Lillard, right? And that was fun. But like, how many times am I going to be able to write about things like that? I promise you, Dan Orlovsky's not going to say that again, and other guys aren't going to do that either. So it's tough finding angles, but you still have to find ways to be creative. You know, like you got to find things. Obviously, the whole Bradley Beal stuff was cool. And that's it. It's like a very short news cycle, and it challenges you because it's like, you know, I'm used to being able to write a lot of I'm used to writing a high volume of things, and now it's just like, okay, well, now what? And that's kind of what coronavirus has done to everybody. It's like, okay, well, now what?
Yeah. So let me ask you, what would you normally be doing? Like if, you know, everything was be normal right now, you know, I mean, I'm losing track of like what the date is. Like,
yeah, every day feels like a Sunday now.
Right.
It's terrible.
May 29th. So, you know, we're probably getting close to the NBA finals.
Yeah.
Around that time. Would you be, you know, covering something like that? Like, would you be covering the NBA playoffs?
Possibly. Depends on how far the Nets go, right? So so I have 3 or 4 different types of days in a week in a perfect world, right? There's number one is an off day. Let's get that out the way early, right? Number one is I have nothing to do. I'm not going to Nets practice. There's no Nets practice or no Nets games. Nothing for me to write about. I'm taking this day. I'm probably playing Call of Duty, sitting outside, minding my business, drinking my water, right? That's an off day. There's game day, right? Game day, there could be a shoot around in the morning. The way game days work is tip-off for Nets games is usually around 7:30. So coach, it used to be Kenny Atkinson, now it's Jacques Vaughn. The coach would speak at 5:45. Opposing coach would speak around 6. Locker rooms would open around 6:15. And then you're writing before, so I'd have to have an early story in, which means I'd have a story that would be good for the newspaper in case this game goes overtime, right? Because we have deadlines, and a game will last from 7:30 until 9:30, sometimes 9:45, and we have a 10 p.m. hard deadline. So if that game is going past 10 o'clock, they've got to use my early to fill in for the paper. So writing it early, then I'm watching the game from 7:30 until 9 or so, whatever time it's over. Then coaches talk again, players talk again. Then I'm writing usually until midnight, and that's a game day, right? And then after that, sometimes teams will practice the day after a game. You said what?
It's a beautiful day.
Yeah. I mean, trust me, it gets stressful sometimes because of deadlines, right? But other than that, it's a lot of fun. Then there's practice days. The Nets will practice at their training facility in Sunset Park, right across the street from Costco, which is pretty cool. They'll usually practice around 10, 11. They'll tell us to get there. Nets media is notorious. They'll tell us to get there. Well, Nets PR is notorious for telling us to arrive at a certain time and then not actually making players available for another hour and a half after. So they'll say, hey, media availability will start. Media should arrive at noon. And then they won't make the players available until 1:30. Like, I could have got some food by then, right? But, I mean, the way it works is, like, you know, you'll go to the training facility. We'll wait in the media room. They'll call us in. We'll get to see a little bit of their practice, which is usually just shooting around. They don't show us any actual plays that they're running through or anything. We'll see them doing some shooting at the end, and then they'll bring players over. So that's a practice day. I'll write usually 2 stories off of a Nets practice. And then those are 3 days. That's off days, game days, practice days. And then there's just like in between days where I'm not necessarily off or I have to write something, but there's no game or practice. Those are days I'll try to go into the Daily News office, though if you ask Andy, he'll tell you I never come in because I don't. I could work from home. But yeah, I'll just sometimes I just sit at home. Maybe I'm taking phone calls, maybe I'm checking emails. I'm just looking for something to write about, you know, and that's what my life is. You know, I find time to write. I find time to balance. I cook a lot. I try to work out somewhat regularly, but not too regularly. And yeah, that's the life of this sports reporter. At least I don't think every sports reporter has the same routine or anything.
A lot of people are talking. A lot of people I talk to, say like they're always talking with a bunch of different people, trying to build up that source list and that contact list. Is that the case for you? Because you said like a lot of people that don't say that they have that built-in off day like you had described earlier.
Right. For me, because I'm so I still consider myself new in journalism, right? Like I just graduated college in 2015 and just graduated college 5 years ago. It's like, dang, it happened like that. But like, a lot of the people that I've talked to about building sources and about like actually making those connections, it's mostly been, hey man, it's a game of longevity. The longer you stay in, the longer people will know you, the longer you have to really foster that relationship. So for me, I've broken a couple stories, not because I've met people who felt comfortable telling me things, but the stories that I've broken, like the news stories that I've broken, have more so been people reaching out to me like, hey, I saw you write this story. I think you should know this. Right, like when I wrote a story about Barclays Center employees not being informed that they were being paid through the pandemic until the Nets announced it on social media. Right, so they didn't. So employees didn't get an email that they were going to get paid through May or whatever after the coronavirus struck. They found out like the rest of the world when then who was it? Joe Tsai said so on Twitter or whatnot. And I had someone hit me up like, hey, well, no, I was just calling because obviously you're at Barclays all the time, you know people. And I just happened to know a couple people. I reached out like, hey, what do you think? What do you think? And someone just happened to tell me, hey, it's cool that they're taking care of us, but they didn't tell us that. We learned the same way you guys did. So for me, building sources has been more so a byproduct of being able to tell stories that usually aren't comfortable. But the sources that I want to start turning, which are, breaking news, someone's trading for a superstar, breaking news, such and such is going to sign with the Lakers. Those are going to be things that take time for me because, 5 years in, it might seem like it's been a long time, but really I'm just now getting my toes wet. This is my first beat writing job. Before this, I was at SB Nation, which is cool. But I know for me, I've got a little ways to go before I can say I'm sourced up. Some people got sources for days.
Yeah. It always makes me think, it's like, oh my God, how did you hear about this? Or how did you hear about this? And, I mean, I'm only 20, going to be a junior in college. And I'm like, I want to know like what some of these like really experienced guys know.
Yeah.
Makes sense? Because like, I want that access,
My biggest advice for you and for anyone who's watching this that is in your footsteps is just like, don't give up. Like there have been very many times where I was working for well below what I felt my work was worth, when, I felt like, forget this, I'm going to go get a job that might pay me $100,000 or $200,000 or whatnot. But like, that was early into it. It was a point where I was working freelancing. Number one, there's you have to work for, that's my favorite word, exposure, right? I went through that point where I was working for no money. I was just getting my name out there, which worked. I did that at Bleacher Report back before they got bought out by Turner. This is when I was in college, freshman year, sophomore year. So I was probably 2010, 2011. They got bought out by Turner in 2012. 2010, 2011, I was writing for them. I was a featured columnist, all that, whatever you want to call it. I was on there, and they were paying me. They were paying me in exposure, quote unquote. Never got a check from them. After that, I had another one. Well, no, after that, I was freelancing at one spot where they were giving like $2 or $3 a story here and there, and sometimes you have to take different opportunities that present themselves and make the most out of it. So that $2, $3 job, I was treating like I was the beat reporter. That was when I was covering the Knicks for a website called Elite Sports New York. And they were paying me by the article. This was after I had left About.com, which like shut its sports section down. And I was writing for them. I was writing for Elite Sports New York for about 3-4 months. But I took that job and I made it. I treated myself, I carried myself like I was a beat reporter covering the Knicks. Even though I was making $2 or $5 a story, I carried myself like, I'm going to be the best reporter in this locker room. And I'm not going to say I was the best reporter in that locker room, but I was carrying myself like I was. And here came SB Nation with a full-time offer. Did the same thing at SB Nation. And here comes the New York Daily News, the paper I grew up reading, And journalism can be an emotional roller coaster because a lot of it is you're taking on other people's emotions as part of your job. I wouldn't say you're a therapist, right? Because therapists literally absorb all those things, but being a journalist and asking questions and having to really be present and analyze people's answers, you kind of take on some of that, so it can be an emotional job. And then on top of that, when you're not getting compensated enough for the work and the hours that you put in, which is a commonality among a lot of journalists, it can be stressful. And my advice to any journalist or any aspiring journalist who knows they're gonna have to go through that is just keep putting in the work and don't give up. Because if I would have quit, I probably maybe year and a half ago, I was thinking about quitting journalism and going to culinary school because I love to cook, right? I was like, I'm just going to quit now, go cook, chase this dream. Because ideally, I'm going to do this journalism thing until I run dry, then go to culinary school and become a master chef, right? That's how it's going to happen. But like, I was thinking about abandoning the entire plan a year and a half ago. And now I'm at, this is what I consider to kind of be like my dream job. So sometimes you got to just bite the bullet. and don't quit. You know, one of my favorite rappers, Nipsey Hussle, said he's been through every emotion, but he just didn't quit, and that's how he became one of the best rappers in the game. R.I.P. to him. So sometimes you got to just thug it out and don't quit and reap the benefits.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, you know, you touched that you want to go off and be like, you know, a master chef later on. Like, I saw you have, like, you know, your own page, you have your own business, fish and chips. You see, it gets.
Leave that in. You can't edit that out.
No, I'm not editing it out.
That's funny. Oh, that's great.
Tell me more about that. Like, tell me, like, why you wanted to start that up.
So I've always my background is my mother is half Filipino and half Black. My father is Trinidadian and Puerto Rican. I grew up on my mother's side mostly, and she cooked an entire amount of food all the time. And I just gravitated, you know, I was always the person who had to clean the shrimp, right? Like, everybody wants to cook the shrimp, but nobody wants to clean it. I had to peel the skin off, I had to devein it, I had to take the knife, cut the back down, all that. And just being in the kitchen for most of my young life, I just grew a love for food. And then I went off to college, and, you know, once you leave the house to go to college, your parents kind of cut the umbilical cord, right? So, you know, at a point it was like, okay, my mom was giving me money, and then I was like, all right, well, you're gonna have to get a job, do something. So I just kind of like started frying fish out of my apartment. I had a little apartment up here. I started frying fish and doing some fish and chip plates. I was selling for $5, $10. And that was how I was paying my rent for a good amount of time. And that was one of my earliest memories of making money cooking, and just the joy of being able to cook something that other people enjoy, and they share that with somebody else. And now you got somebody else coming to you because they want your food. And it's nothing like it. You know, it's almost like the rush of chasing a story and then writing a story that everybody loves. You know what I'm saying? Like, those are the two feelings that I very much enjoy. So that's kind of how I got into food. My LLC, Kristian Chips, on 420. Shout out to God. And here we are.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, you know, if those emotions really correlate with, you know, journalism too, because you are so passionate about, you know, journalism too, and chasing the stories that other people just love to read.
Yeah, you know, and journalism for me started high school, maybe like junior year in high school was when, because everyone has different moments of realization that they're not going to the NBA, right? Like, at some point you understand, okay, I'm not about to be the next Chris Paul. I'm not about to be the next Steph Curry, AI, Kobe. Like, it's clipped for me. I'm not going, right? I had that realization early-ish. I had that in high school. But I told myself at that point, well, I always want to be around this sport. There's nothing like it. And I'm a damn good writer. So how about we put the two together? And I kind of just mapped it out backwards. And, you know, for me, it was more so, okay, I knew that this job pretty much was where I wanted to be at this point in my career. Right? I knew I wanted to come back home. I knew I didn't want to do high school sports or college sports, because I knew that if you start in high school or you start in college, it's easy to get stuck there, right? And I just didn't want to stay. I didn't want to you know, pigeonhole myself as a high school sports reporter or a college sports reporter. I wanted to go straight to the NBA, and I did that. And just like being able to, you know, and how can I explain this best? Tyler Tynes, he was one of my good coworkers. He helped me get the job at SB Nation. Now he writes at The Ringer. He changed my mindset almost with how I approach locker rooms. He goes, yo, you have to understand that as a reporter, you have eyes and you have ears and you have senses that other people don't. Well, I mean, obviously everybody has the same senses, but I'm in there and other people aren't, right? Like, right. I have to be the person who sees, hears, and smells things and relays that to my readers. He's like, you have an obligation to do that, right? He's like, you can't, like, you have to go in there and really do the job for your readers. And just giving. Okay. I think I was just wrapping up about what Tyler had told me and how I kind of took that to heart, and how that is really to kind of circle back to your question. That's kind of how I got to the point where it was like, yo, this is kind of a heartwarming experience for me, just being able to, because it's kind of like a badge of honor. It's a little bit of pride that you have to have, knowing that you are somewhere that the average human being cannot be, and because you are there, you have an obligation to them to deliver everything that you can, everything that you experience in that locker room or on that court or in those corridors while there's a hustle and bustle after a game. You've got to be on your game, and that's part of the process that I enjoy a lot as well.
You know, you had mentioned that, like, probably a year and a half into this, that you were really wanting to quit. What got you through those times? Because a lot of, you know, the sentiments I've heard from, you know, other college students or, even with myself, to some extent, like it's a very cutthroat industry and everybody says like that. Everybody pushes that like, yeah, only like if you're good, you'll go on. But if like, it's tough. And it's very condescending in a way, but obviously it's not impossible. So what kept you going through that tough time to get you where you are now?
Well, first, I wasn't gonna make a huge call like that without, checking in with the support system. Called my brother. He basically told me I was crazy and said I shouldn't quit. Then I called. I was working out with a trainer at the time, and I was telling him how I was feeling. He was like, "Yo, man, you," and he kind of just reminded me like, "Yo, you are." How would I put it? What he said. He basically kind of made me realize that I have to be grateful for the position that I am. He's like, there are thousands, if not tens of thousands of people that would love to be in my shoes. And by me having that type of attitude, I'm kind of doing a disservice not only to myself, but to them, but to anyone who wants to aspire to be somewhat remotely the reporter I am or follow this kind of path. For me to kind of bail on my own dream, in a sense, would kind of be ridiculous. And I'm grateful that I talked to both of them. But I think most of it for me was kind of recentering and refocusing for me on what the goal was. And I want to be the best possible sports writer that I can be and see what other avenues that opens up. And, for me, if I would have quit at that point, that would have never happened. I would have lived in a world of regret, and I try not to do that. So, I was just most like, okay, well, I'm going to see this through. And then on top of that, the Daily News came with a pretty significant offer shortly after I had those feelings. So, that kind of made a lot of those things go away, to be honest. In journalism, a lot of things can boil down to financials. A lot of people get underpaid for their work. And for the Daily News to come through and give me a pretty sizable raise and give me the title and position that I've always wanted was pretty perfect.
Was that really more of a validating moment for you in your career that
absolutely
it was worth it?
Yeah, it was one of those things where like there were no real negotiations. They came to the table with an offer, and I took it on the spot. Basically, there was nothing for me to say. I was like, okay, yes, this is perfect. And it was like finally, someone. I mean, obviously, when you write something, no matter what you get for it, if it's good or not. But for someone to put a monetary value that they feel is what your work is worth, and it's kind of like where you also feel your work is worth, it's pretty, it's a validating moment, as you said, for sure.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get there one day myself.
You will. Don't hope. Just keep moving forward, and it'll come to you.
Yeah, I agree. What are like some of your biggest strengths that make you such a good reporter? Because obviously everybody has like their own different thing. Like they like to write one thing a certain way. They like to ask a question. What are some of your, biggest assets that make you the reporter you are?
I think I can be aware. I'm like, when I'm locked in, I'm very in the moment. And that's what reporting is all about. You've got to be able to see something go down, see what happens as a result, and then really just be able to absorb all that and put that on paper. And I'm not saying I'm in the moment all the time, right? Like, right. I feel like everyone has those moments where they could be just out of it completely. But when I walk into that NBA, when I walk into Barclays, when I walk into Madison Square Garden, that's all that has my attention. And I've always had the ability to whether I'm in the kitchen, right, or I'm on, like I told you, I was on a date and I had my phone faced over. Like if I'm in a situation and I'm about it, I lock in 100%. And that's one thing that's made me a very good reporter. Obviously, I fancy myself a pretty solid writer. And I've been told, there's different types of writers. I'm a great event coverage writer. You know what I'm saying? Like wherever I'm at, if something is happening in real time, I can relay that to an audience like nobody else, I think.
Right.
And just experience as well. I've been doing this in my mind since I was in high school, right? Was writing about my high school basketball team, writing about college basketball team. At a certain point, it becomes a little bit of muscle memory because a lot of stories repeat themselves, right? There's a winner, there's a loser, there's a controversy, there's a blown call. Every story, I don't think I've seen a story that I haven't seen before except for the coronavirus, right? This is the first thing I've never seen before. Everything else we've seen blown calls, we've seen underdogs win, we've seen dominant teams win all the way through. At a certain point, it becomes just a little repetitive. So it's kind of finding your little bit of creativity in that repetition that kind of helps people stand out. And then I was blessed to work at SB Nation for 3 seasons with a team of editors who really, really kind of helped me find my voice. Shout outs to Mike Prada. If he ever ends up watching this, I don't know where this is going to be. But he was one guy that really helped me find my writing style, my writing voice. And they just gave you the freedom there to pursue the different types of stories you wanted. I started writing a lot about basketball and food there. I put the two together. Interviewed Dwayne Wade's head coach. I interviewed Dwayne Wade's personal chef. Talked to a bunch of players that went vegan. Talked to Andre Iguodala about his diet and his exercise routine. Like different things like that. SB Nation allowed me to do. And that I never envisioned myself working at SB Nation. I didn't really know what they were until I started working there. But sometimes that's the way it goes. You know, life takes you places that you need to be sometimes. I needed to be at SB Nation. And I would say all those things, just A, being locked in the moment all the time, B, having my creativity really pushed at SB Nation, and then C, just having that background as a really strong writer, 3 things that kind of make me a good reporter for sure.
Mm-hmm. You know, you talked about, being locked in, and something I like to ask a lot of people when either I'm just getting to know them or writing a feature on them is, what's something you really like or admire about them?
Wow. Aside from my dashing good looks, I'm not really sure. Something I really admire myself is, perseverance for sure. I've gone through a fair share of adversity, some deserved, some not. Right. And just like I've always had the mindset, and I read something one day where it's like, or I was listening, maybe it was a podcast or maybe it was somebody that was speaking, and they said, you owe yourself 5 minutes or so to be mad about whatever happened, or to be angry, to be pissed or annoyed, or whatever that emotion is when something happens that is not what you expected it to be. You owe yourself 5 minutes to kind of let all that anger out, and then after that you got to move on. So I kind of have, how they say shooters have a terrible memory, right? They always forget what the shots they made. They always forget the shots they missed. That you could miss 50,000 shots and you make 50,001. Well, I'm of the same ilk where it's like, bad things happen all the time. Things happen, setbacks happen, but I kind of move past them. I find a way to move past them gracefully as well. So that's one thing that I've always admired about myself. It's just been just growing up in New York City, growing up in Brooklyn and Bed-Stuy, kind of trouble doesn't necessarily come looking for you. Well, you don't go looking for trouble. Sometimes trouble is around, and you got to just push through sometimes, and that just goes with everything. That's like life, that's finances, that's relationships. Sometimes you got to just keep it pushing. And for me, I think if I had a different mental approach to life, I might not be where I'm at right now, but thankfully I don't. And perseverance is definitely one. And then just the way I think and the way I'm able to talk to people, really listening, because that's what journalism really boils down to. You could talk all day, but if you're not listening, you don't have a story.
Right.
And I think I listen very well. So I think those are 2 things that I attribute to my success for sure.
What's next for you? What do you want to do next? Or if there's a next, do you, I know you're covering the Nets for the Daily News, but
yeah,
is that your ultimate goal?
It's not. I don't even say this. I mean, I love journalism, right? And as I got into journalism because I loved writing and I loved basketball. I wanted to put those 2 together. But right. I mean, in a dream scenario, I follow the footsteps of a couple of other journalists who were able to make that transition over to NBA front office. The reason I got into journalism, aside from loving basketball and loving and being a strong writer, is because I wanted to know more about that. I wanted to learn the game. I knew I wasn't good enough to play in college, right? I was never good. I wasn't in the best shape. I had a decent jump shot, but I couldn't make 10 threes in a row at any point in my life, right? Like I was your average New York City kid. I was okay at basketball. I kind of had an idea what I wanted to do. But I knew for sure that I wanted to write about basketball. I knew I wanted to use writing as an avenue to learn more so I could parlay myself into a front office. So that's kind of the longer term goal. But also opening a restaurant. I LLC'd Chris and Chips not too long ago, but I don't even know what the food industry is going to look like after this coronavirus outbreak. Like, who knows what that's going to be. But short term, in terms of like the next 3 to 5 years or so, I think I'm in a really good place at the Daily News, and this 3, 5, maybe 10, who knows? Daily News is taking really good care of me so far. They give you a place like this, they kind of give you the freedom because they know they brought me here for a reason, because I know how to write. I know how to cover not just events, I know how to cover teams. And it's just more so, hey, this is your team, this is your beat. Do what you no, do what you feel is best, and that's what I've been able to do. So short term, even short to mid-term, I could see myself here at the Daily News for some time. However long they're going to keep cutting checks, to be honest, because a lot of people are getting furloughed, a lot of people getting laid off. So in a way, I'm blessed just to be in this position. But the big goal of mine is to really make my way into a front office. I want to bring a championship to New York, either if it's Brooklyn or it's Manhattan. I want to bring a championship to one of my hometown teams, ideally both. So that's where I want to go with it.
Yeah, I definitely would love to see the next one.
Right.
So anybody who can help that cause has my seal of approval.
There it is. That's what we need.
But yeah, I mean, I definitely love, I definitely like that, because you don't hear too many journalists wanting to go on to, be in a front office.
Yeah.
So
especially because the big one that did it was David Kahn, right? And David Kahn went on to become the GM of the Timberwolves, and where he drafted Johnny Flynn and Ricky Rubio before Stephen Curry, and then he drafted Ty Lawson later in the round, and that was a complete disaster. I'm not sure another reporter has ever been or sports writer has ever been the GM of a team. I know Lee Jenkins, who used to be at SI, just went over to the Clippers not too long ago, a couple of years back. So I need to reach out to him. But other than that, I don't think there's been a reporter to GM process or a reporter to GM transition ever, other than David Kahn. So that's the guy who I'm trying to succeed and do better than. So yeah, it's a winding road, but I know at a certain point, things, that if you do the work and you keep your mind on the prize, you keep your eye on the prize, that things will come to you. So I just have to stay locked in and do what I've been doing.
Yeah. Anyway, I really appreciate your time with this. It means the world.
Thank you, man. I appreciate any time, man. Anything I can do for you, whether it's hitting up. I've worked at a couple different places, so if you need any recommendations or anything like that, or if you think at the end of the day, a lot of this journalism stuff is who you know, not what you know, and it can be a mix of both. But SB Nation, I got that job because I knew. Well, I guess it's a mix for me. I got that job at SB Nation. Obviously, I've always been a strong writer, but I knew somebody, and then at the Daily News, somebody knew me and they recommended me, and then they followed. So a lot of it is networking and who you know. So if you're ever interested in working somewhere that I may know somebody, I might be able to, can't guarantee a job ever, but I can definitely guarantee you getting past the email stage, right? Because a lot of people get their application stuck in the email, and that's the worst place to be.
Yeah. Anyway, it means the world to me. Be well, and I'm looking forward to sharing this story.
Thank you, man. Same to you. Thanks for having me.